Okay, so we're going to go ahead and open this session. We would like to welcome you all to New Perspectives, which is hosted by Aro University in Surat, India, and Sri Aurobindo Integral Life Center in Surat and here in Fountain Inn, South Carolina. New Perspectives, as many of you may know, is a platform dedicated to the integral yoga teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And I'm Rade, and I am joined, of course, by our guest speaker today, James Anderson, which we are absolutely thrilled to have with us today. Before beginning, let us just join in a few moments of silent contemplation. So again, welcome, and it is certainly our great honor to be hosting James today. James is the coordinating editor of Namaha, the Journal of Integral Health that's based in Pondicherry and affiliated with the Sri Aurobindo Society. James is also a writer, a healer, and teacher, and he just published his book, A Torch in the Dark, which examines human growth in an integral and experiential way. And for those interested, beginning this October 8th, next Friday, James will be conducting an online workshop called Practice for Integral Growth. Everyone here today should have received in our most recent email information on how to register for this workshop, but I've also posted the PDF flyer in the chat box, as well as James' email address in case you would like to contact him directly. And I'll be reposting that towards the end of the workshop also. I know James has been tirelessly working this past year, not only on finalizing his book, but as well in the development and coordination of countless Namaha workshops covering a wide spectrum of integral yoga topics. And I think I've joined just about every single workshop and can certainly attest to their very high quality and the depth of expertise in the speakers on these workshops. So it's just so wonderful, James, that Namaha has made available so many integral yoga offerings this past year. And today on New Perspectives, James speaks on how to enhance our immunity. In this exploratory and practical session, he'll share ways of reinforcing the subtle shield that surrounds us and looks at the gradations of immunity that are available to us. So before turning it over to you, James, I just want to mention to all our attendees that are still signing in that there will be a Q&A session towards the end of the hour. And there will be at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box. So if instead of the chat, you can put any questions during the hour for James in that Q&A box, then we'll address as many as possible towards the end. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, James, for your session.
Stay. It's I'd just like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Radi and Vladimir for inviting me to address you all, because it's my first time, and I feel greatly honored to be addressing this forum for the first time, and very happy to do so. The subject of my session is enhancing your unity. Actually, I would have put the I would have given a slightly different title actually to this, develop your own immunity, because I feel that is more pertinent really. Now, as Ryder said, I've written a book on growth, and it's something that I'm deeply and passionately interested in, is the concept of human growth and how we practice and how we evolve and how we develop ourselves. So it's basically something that's very, very important for us all, and it's very, very important to me. Now, the whole essence of developing yourself, growing, is we have to rely on our inner capacities. We have to rely on our inner strengths, our inner being. We have to rely on that. Now, what tends to happen in yoga, and what should happen in yoga, is that these outside props that support our lives from the outside tend to get dismissed, quite rightly so. So the whole essence of growing, which is yoga, the whole essence of growing, which is yoga, is to exceed ourselves, is to exceed our present capacities. It's also to overpass our human limitations. It's basically a journey that we have to undertake individually, and we have to rely on our own resources. And that's not quite true, because we have the mother to rely on. When we surrender to the mother, when we surrender to Sri Aurobindo, we have a whole wealth of support at our disposal. But the concept is true. It is us that have to evolve. It is us that have to develop ourselves. It's us that have to exceed our present capabilities. And I feel that humanity is got a slightly warped idea of how we can reach a state of well-being. It's basically something that comes from inside. Well-being comes from inside. It comes from here. It comes from here. And we don't need any outward confirmations other than the affirmations that and the expressions that Sri Aurobindo and the Mother give us. We don't need that. We just have ourselves to rely upon, and we have to find a way, negotiating life's challenges in a very integrated way. And one of these challenges that we face in life is how to immunize ourselves, or how to get close to immunizing ourselves, because I don't believe that anyone has got the complete answer to that question, or is living the complete answer to that question. So basically, we have to find a way of developing our own immunity. It's not the end of yoga, it's just a means to it. It's just, if you like, it's a byproduct of yoga. It's something that we do when we integrate ourselves, when we make ourselves complete and whole, when we connect with the divine. This essence of immunity descends down upon us. And these material props that we have, offered by pharmaceutical companies or whatever, they tend to take away the whole essence of our purpose in integral yoga, which is to develop our own protection, our own level of protection from harm from outside. So these material supports that we have should be looked at very closely and looked at with a discerning nature. Now, there are three gradations in my opinion, in my assessment, of self-immunity. Firstly, there is our natural immunity. This is the immunity that we obtain by leading physically a natural life, by eating the right food, drinking an adequate amount of water, clean water, getting enough rest, obtaining enough exercise, getting enough sleep, these sort of things. These sort of things enhance our physical equilibrium. And our physical equilibrium is very, very essential to our health. It's very, very essential to our health. So these are measures that we take to balance our physical being, very important. And they have to be, it's the first step in the ladder, as it were, and they have to be observed. If you want to obtain a level of commensurable immunity. Now, the problem with this particular type of immunity is that the physical doesn't stand alone. It's part of a great network that is arranged inside us. We have our vital being and we have our mental being. And these three often collide. They often grate at one another, cause a great deal of friction, and they can undermine the physical well-being quite easily. So there are limitations to this natural physical equilibrium, because it can't stand alone. We have to observe ourselves in our entirety, in our integrality. And we have to develop ourselves through our consciousness. Now, the first type of immunity, natural immunity, is probably the most under threat at the moment, because you take a look at the food that we eat and you think, gosh, is that really safe for me? You go out on the street and you encounter types of antisocial behavior. Is that really going to help you? So what I'm saying is that this natural immunity is not enough. And we have to graduate to a higher level of immunity. And that higher level of immunity is offered by what Mother's terms the nervous envelope, the subtle shield that surrounds our body, our gross body. I'm going to read a quote from the Mother. To whatever cause an illness may be due, material or mental, external or internal, it must, before it can affect the physical body, touch another layer of the being that surrounds and protects it. So this layer, the being, the Mother termed, she gave a couple of other names, but she termed the nervous envelope. The nervous envelope. And there is a certain density to this nervous envelope, which is perceptible with practice, with growing consciousness. You can actually perceive this denser layer that surrounds our body, and it can be enhanced, can be strengthened. Now, this particular layer that surrounds our body is a wonderful protection for us to have in life. And many, it's not just yogis that have it, it's normal people have it. It's basically something that stays intact if the first requirement of natural immunity is met. Because with equilibrium, physical equilibrium, you're on the first step to reinforcing this subtle shield. You have to work a little bit harder on that, because you have to try and integrate your nature and instill a certain amount of calmness, instill a certain amount of peace, which will, and the equilibrium will reinforce this subtle shield. Establish a greater peace and stillness in your body. That will give you the strength to resist attacks of illness. This calmness, this sense of peace and quietness is what enhances this subtle shield that surrounds us. It strengthens it. We can reinforce it still further if we apply our consciousness to this entity. And we'll do that later. But what happens when we get out of this state of peace, when we get out of this state of calmness and quietness, and become restless, bored, or fearful, then it has the effect of puncturing a hole in this subtle shield, in this nervous envelope, and rendering it almost ineffectual, because these microbes, these entities that surround us, are looking for an entrance, looking for a gateway to enter. And once the subtle shield, once the nervous envelope is punctured, it leaves an opening for these sort of illnesses and accidents as well. I have to say, accidents as well can happen through this puncturing of the nervous envelope, because we are also protected from accidents by this nervous envelope. So it is not really exceptional people that have this particular protection. It's not really yogis or sadhaks necessarily. It can be normal people, provided they're fairly well integrated, provided they're fairly well aligned, provided they're leading a lifestyle which is not going to cause havoc. They can step forward with some sort of level of immunity. Now, in integral yoga, we have the gift of deploying our consciousness. We have the gift of deploying the connection that lies deep inside. And this consciousness very much solidify, enhance, and strengthen this subtle shield. So we're on the borderline, really, of the subtle immunity and what I would term the psychic immunity. Because once the consciousness intervenes, we step into a whole new level of immunity. So, once we establish a deeper more abiding connection inside, we have the capacity with our consciousness to deploy this connection, to utilize this connection for our further good, for the good of mankind as well. Because psychic immunity is the highest gradation that can be achieved. It comes from living within. It comes from having an abiding faith and trust in the divine. It comes from having an abiding love, devotion for the divine, for the mother, if the mother is your personal teacher, of course, Sheridan as well. So I would say that this psychic immunity is built on faith and trust. We have a faith. We have a faith that we shall be able to continue this work that has been given to us. We have a faith and a trust that our body, our health, and our well-being will remain intact. And it is this psychic faith which the mother refers to in agenda as living inside her cocoon. Living inside her cocoon. It's like a cocoon of white light. And she builds it for you. She builds it for us. Once you give yourself to her, she builds this cocoon for us. And we have this innate ability to walk through circumstances, to walk through life's situations. If one is inside this cocoon with complete impunity, complete immunity, complete safety, complete protection. And this psychic immunity works a little bit different from the subtle immunity, because the subtle immunity is protecting us from accidents, it's protecting us from illnesses, physical harm. But the psychic immunity is protecting us from these things as well, but also is protecting us from psychological impacts, psychological harm, wrong movements, movements that harm our nature, harm our being. Take the matter of desire, for instance. Now, if you're attuned to the psychic being, you have a feeling of slight unease, slight disquietness when a desire is starting to come forward within our nature. It's a very, very subtle, it's a very, very beautiful way of protecting ourselves. Because the psychic immunity covers all these things, covers all these things. I would say the reason why it is imperative that we develop our own immunity. Greatest reason is because we've been called to do a very special and unique work on this earth. And we've been called to work with our body. We've been called to refine our body consciousness. We have been called to increase and develop our body consciousness. And we can only do that if we're working intimately and exclusively with the body ourselves. We have to take responsibility for our body. We have to take responsibility for our nature as well. But the body is the crucible of what is going to manifest on this earth. That is transformation. The body is the final link in the transformation. No transformation is possible without the collaboration of the body. And I believe a body that is not being interfered by outside agencies, but exclusively being worked upon by ourselves, exclusively being refined by ourselves, will serve us a great purpose indeed. I'm not going to go into any debate about vaccine, but it's up to all of us to make our minds about it. But all I would say is that we are responsible for our immunity. And there are ways that it can be developed much more easily and much more effectively without outside interference. Now, when we work with our consciousness, we seek to integrate ourselves, integrate our being. And it is this integration, it is this movement, progressive movement of integration, which so enhances our immunity. If we are integrated inside, and if our nature is deeply connected to the psychic influence. Then we are doing the well-being. I'd like you now to close your eyes. Close your eyes and connect with the divine. Connect with the divine mother. Deeply, deeply connect. We're going to work with the body. This way of working with the body has a way of bringing the psychic influence forward, has a way of finding the true mastery of our nature. So we're going to work with the body from top to bottom, and we're going to just observe what is there. From a deep connection inside, from a deep essence inside, you're looking at the body, looking at your physical being. Deeply connected. And you're looking to invoke psychic presence wherever there is any disturbance, or wherever there is any unease or pain, for instance. You start above the head, slowly go down the head. Just see what is there. Don't judge. Just observe. You're a witness, but you're a dynamic witness, because the consciousness has the ability to change what it sees. So go down the body, the head. Wherever you see any knots or unease or friction or pain, hold your gaze at that point. Hold your gaze and just inquire why this particular area is so dispersed. If you like, you can gently inquire, verbally if you like, as to why this disturbance has appeared. You're working with a psychic influence, but you're also conscious, maybe, of a descending force. A descending force, which is going from the top of your head and if you want to really gain benefit from this descending force, this particular flow has to be totally uninterrupted. So wherever there is a break in this flow, wherever there is a stop, a pause, then keep your consciousness on that spot and see what happens. See what happens. Sometimes patience is greatly required, but sometimes the answer, the response is quite spontaneous and automatic. Don't judge what you see. You're just observing. You're just observing with the power of consciousness. And further through the neck, through the chest, what do you see? The consciousness bringing light to these parts of your being. Is there a sense of integration, connection, like your house is being internally put in order? Let's continue the process. Don't rush. Just watch this force. Where it breaks, when there's a break in the flow, deploy your consciousness in that particular area. So there are two entities working at the moment. There's your consciousness, which is activating psychic influence. There's your consciousness, which is inviting and clearing a pathway for the descending force. So go further down your body, maybe to the solar plexus area. Stomach area. Push the force. Feel yourself integrating. Feel yourself becoming more aligned. Look at your body in detail, but from the perspective of its own entirety. And also, look at the body, the left and right sides of the body. Is one side more aligned than the other? Is the front of your body more aligned than the back? Because the body is a perfect channel for our entire nature. The body is a barometer of our inner psychology. Everything surfaces on the body. Any disruption, any psychological disturbance manifests on the body. So the body is a wonderful, beautiful channel with which to work. So down the body, through the hips, the genital area, thighs, slowly. Watch the force, feel the force, see the force if you can see it. Calves, shins, put the feet, the ankles, the feet that have to carry you. Forget the feet. Look at the body in detail, but from the context of its whole entirety, from its whole integrality. It's possible. Be with this for a couple of minutes. Watching the force, feeling the sense of integration, feeling the sense of alignment. So how do you feel? Just feel, see if there is anything happening, sending through your body now. Do you feel a sense of peace, dynamic peace, descending through your body? Because it is this peace. It is our best safeguard in negotiating all the contours of our daily life. Feel this peace for about 30 seconds. Feel it intensely. Now I'd like you to keep that integrated poise, that sense of alignment, and look around your body. Look around. Try and feel, try and be conscious of, try and be aware of what surrounds the body. This is going to take quite a lot of practice, I think, but it is possible to have a sense of knowledge about this subtle shield, this nervous envelope that surrounds us. As I said, there's a certain density to it. My mother said it's a little bit like hot steam, kettle or something like that. But there is a certain density to it. Just be aware, just be conscious of what surrounds you. Just be present. Just be present with this subtle shield. Just be conscious. It's nervous envelope. And also, try to infuse the light of the divine, Mother's light, Sri Aurobindo's sky blue light, into this subtle shield. So picture slowly appearing. Is there a sense of presence you feel around your body? So hold on to that presence. Hold on. Hold on to that presence. And when I ask you, I'm not going to ask you yet, but when I ask you to open your eyes, I want you to hold on to that presence. Hold on to that presence when you open the eyes. Because there is sometimes a gravitational pull towards the surface that you might feel. But try to make the transition between the inner and outer consciousness as seamless as possible, as connected as possible. Be aware of this immunity that's established within you, around you, and inside you. Truly, if we want to walk through life's challenges with impunity, this is the sort of immunity that we need. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, James. And as people are kind of slowly opening their eyes and kind of getting reoriented and grounded, if there's anyone that would like to share their experience with James or have a question about their experience, or just a question in general about the discussion today on immunity, you can either put it in the chat or you can just raise your hand. I've enabled the raise hand function, and if you raise your hand, I'll go ahead and open your mic, and you can ask James your question.
Yeah, that'd
Just
be nice.
yeah, we'll see how this works. I don't use this often, but it seemed applicable today. It would
Okay.
be nice.
Yeah, okay.
So let us do. And we've got a first
Yeah.
hand. I think it was thought somebody K rose their hand. Or put in your chat, put in the chat box your name if you would like to say something, and we'll open your mic. That also will work. Any thoughts, any experiences that you had, any questions for James? I'm just going to scroll here, James, to see if and I'll just ask you. This was just a wonderful meditation or concentration that you offered. Are these the type of exercises that you'll be including, or practices that you'll be including in your upcoming workshop?
Yeah, I think yes, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be looking at integration and alignment on the third day. It's a weekly workshop every Friday at 4 o'clock Indian Standard Time. It's on Fridays, the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. So it's on Friday. And on the third session, I shall look at practice of alignment and integration. Nice. I've done before a couple of times.
Nice. And let me, I see a hand raised. I'm going to go ahead and open Vernie. You should be able to open. Here she comes. You can just unmute yourself and share with James anything that you would like to, or to ask a question. Let me maybe make a co-host so that you can unmute.
James, what about the question of surgeries one needs or is told they need from time to time with regard to immunity?
Yeah, it's a good point, Bernie, actually, because in 2015, I went through surgery as well, and had a hip operation. Had an artificial hip placed in my body. And the effect of that was there was a certain loss of obviously plasticity and fluidity. But at the same time, there was this sense of well-being. There was no more pain. You know? So sometimes we have to succumb to these surgical treatments. And I put my hand up on that occasion and said, please do it for me. But I'd like to think that maybe I wasn't sufficiently evolved to deal with that particular dilemma with my consciousness. That could be the case, because it's a question of your personal evolution, really. How you are going to deal with these sort of things, these challenges that come up against you. And obviously, in 2015, I benefited from it because I hadn't found the inner resources to basically overcome this pain. But surgery is appropriate sometimes, yes, sure.
Thank you.
And we have 3 or 4 questions here in the Q&A box. So let me just read a couple of them out to you, James. From Claudia, thank you, James, for this powerful experience and talk. If I heard correctly, you said no transformation is possible without body transformation. What do you understand by body transformation?
Well, it means that the complete transmutation of the body into what represents a new species. Much more plastic, much more transparent. It's impossible to describe. I'm not qualified to describe what the supramental body will bring to us. But the transformation is not complete until it has the final seal of the body, the bodily transformation. The body is the crucible of transformation. And we can't even imagine how wonderful, how beautiful, just awe-inspiring how this work of evolution is going to produce within our body. We can't label it, Claudia, I'm afraid, but we can imagine from reading others' works. There's quite a few descriptions in the agenda as well of visions of supernatural beings. And so I suggest you follow that line if you're curious about that. But I wouldn't like to commit myself to any outstanding comment.
Sure, understandable, James. Here's another question. Will the psychic immunity be able to halt the progression of diseases like cancer with consistent practice?
Yes, I believe it can. Psychic immunity can work with a subtle immunity as well. They're not they're not mutually exclusive, you know. The subtle immunity works against physical illness, and it works against the invasion of such illnesses such as cancer. And if it is reinforced with the psychic protection, the psychic connection, anything is possible. Anything is possible. But then, you know, we cannot sort of dictate as to what's going to happen to ourselves. We're not, you know, we have to accept our destiny. We have to accept. We leave the results to the divine. Put it like that. We leave the results to the divine.
Yeah. And I think, as you pointed out, for psychic immunity, it's faith and trust are paramount.
Yeah,
so that's where you go, faith and trust.
And peace.
And peace. Great. One of our attendees says, I went into a trance during the closed eyes session. This often happens for short periods of time, and I don't know where I go, but feels blissful afterwards. Any thoughts about this?
I was hoping you'd go to your body.
There you go. Don't go out, go in.
I was maybe it's the effect of my voice, I don't know. But basically, I was hoping that you would go more inward
into the body.
But if that's what your criteria for the moment is, that's fine. I hope you found the experience beneficial.
Sure, sure. And I think many of us have had in the past developed particular meditation practices that do take you out of your body. And so when
Yeah,
you are given a practice to bring you into your body, it's just natural to revert back to the state that you've built up and developed. And so it takes some time to kind of reorient to the body.
yes,
Yeah, that's what I've
yes.
noticed. Another attendee says, if you sense a place in the body where the light does not reach or is damaged in some way, how do you work on repairing it?
You have to be very patient, because these sorts of obstructions are not easily conquered. Maybe in one sitting, maybe even in 2 sittings. You have to be very, very patient. And sometimes these knots appear again and again and again. Sometimes they go away under the pressure of the psychic influence or the pressure of the descending force. But the whole work hasn't been completely finalized, and so they come back again and again. So you have to be very patient, and you have to hold your consciousness on the spot that is troubling you. And if you recognize what is troubling you, firstly you can look at the part of the locality of the body and say, right, it's the solar plexus. Okay. So you address your comments to the solar plexus in the knowledge that you're talking to the solar plexus. And also, you can detect from the consciousness what the psychological afflictions behind the resistance that you're seeing, and you can do this quite beautifully if you just keep present, keep conscious, and just hold your gaze, hold the torchlight that the consciousness gives you, hold the torchlight on that spot, hold it on that spot. And honestly, knowledge comes, it does. You can ask a question, why are you here? Why are you here? And you don't get a verbal answer, but you get like a totally silent, but very powerful answer might emerge. And once that happens, once you have that knowledge, once you have the knowledge of what you're confronting, once the consciousness has that knowledge, then it heals. It heals.
Nice, very well said. I appreciate you staying on and to answer these remaining questions. I'm just wondering before we go, could you say a little bit about your newly released book, A Torch in the Dark? And it seems it's only available on Kindle, if and when it'll be available on hardback through
No,
Amazon.
it's not. It's a paperback book, actually, but it is available in print as well. You have to be a little bit patient about this because I shouldn't say anything naughty about the Indian government, but they've put a block on these overseas gateway transfers. So basically, but if you want to get the printed version, please write to me on my email address and I can arrange that for you. It is available on Kindles, like it says. It's of course available in India quite easily, but it is available in foreign countries. All the airlines are pretty much operating now, so you can get them all out to. But you want to know a little bit about the book?
Yeah, maybe just share a little bit about the book for our attendees.
Yeah, well, it's like a very experiential book. It's written through the lens of my limited, emerging personal experience. So it's quite it tells my story, but in a way which hopefully relates to other people, and hopefully relates to the processes that we have to go through in order to evolve and grow. So it's a very experiential book, very exploratory book, and it very much takes the integral perspective. It was written in lockdown. It was actually written in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just assumed you've been like years. Most people take years.
I'm a very, very slow typist as well. I've got 2 fingers, you know. Very slow typist. But there was lockdown, so I had a chance. It was in April and May. And 6 weeks. I finished the book in 6 weeks, but then there was a long, long process to get it ready for publication and getting the copy editing and everything.
Sure.
So yeah, I had a lot of help from people, namely Dr. Love, particularly. Great inspiration to me. Other people as well. It was a joy to write the book. It really was a joy. And, I felt so wonderful through that 6 weeks, you know, and so engaged, you know. So I can get it back again sometime.
Yeah, it's total concentration when you're writing a book. Absolutely. Well, can't wait to read it, and we really appreciate again, James, you joining us on New Perspectives, and for our attendees for staying with us for a few extra minutes. And I posted again in the chat box the upcoming workshop that James will be giving through Namaha, and also the link to our website that you can have this recorded talk in case you want to walk back through that concentration that James shared with us. So again, thank you all. Thank you, James. Really much appreciate it.
Yes.
Namaste.